What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Steven Thompson, coming at you with another Inside Pitt practice report. The Panthers opened Wake Forest week today. We heard from Pat Narduzzi. He talked a little bit about the Louisville game, Christian Veillere, the quarterback situation, some offensive line, some defensive stuff as well. Just a lot of bases to cover. A little bit more of an upbeat press conference after a win. Obviously, such a big win as that, and breaking a 4-game winning streak. So let's get right into the big news of the day, beginning with the depth chart. That was kind of the biggest thing that we talked about. There were some alterations, some key stuff that the Panthers switched up as they get ready to take on the Demon Deacons. And the biggest one, we got to talk about the quarterbacks again. There's a new quarterback order on the depth chart this week. Phil Dracovic is now quarterback 3. Nate Yardnell has been elevated to the backup, quarterback 2. And Christian Veillere retains his spot atop the depth chart after a really strong starting debut. I thought, Pat Narduzzi said when he made the starting quarterback switch that this didn't really have anything to do with looking towards the future. It was not about 2024 or punting on this season. It was supposed to help them win now. And even though it did seem like, it helped them win now, Christian Veillere was real impressive in his debut, and it seemed like some improved quarterback play really did help the Panthers turn things around, especially offensively. But it doesn't seem, like their move to bench Jurkovic wasn't necessarily about the future as well. It seems like they were kind of being a little forward thinking and maybe just delayed a little bit in, that process, at least showing it publicly on the depth chart and in an official capacity. I think demoting Jurkovic down to quarterback 3 and elevating Yarnell is a clear signal that the Panthers are thinking with 2024 in mind and setting up what could be a starting quarterback battle next season going into the spring between Yarnell and Bayer, excuse me. I do also think this lends a little bit more credence to the rumors about Phil switching to tight end. If he's moving further and further down the quarterback depth chart, I think that means, they're maybe thinking about a different role for him. They're clearly already thought about a different role for him since he's no longer the starting quarterback. But I think this opens the door for maybe a more serious switch to tight end and maybe thinking about him in that sense. So that's something to look out for. I think this is more of a this was a de facto move. I don't think that if the Panthers really needed a backup for Veillere, or for Veillere in that Louisville game, that they would have gone to Jurkovic. I think they might have been more inclined to look at Yarnell. We saw Phil with, 2 gloves on the sidelines throughout that game. It wasn't like he was running routes in warmups or anything, but he didn't usually he hasn't worn gloves before this season. While he was warming up or on any game day. So I think that's something to look out for, and I think just signals that they know that Jurkovic's a graduate transfer, that he's not playing again for them next year. So to kind of explore what he still can offer as a quarterback is maybe not as useful an exercise as giving Nate Yarnell some more reps and seeing what you have in him, especially compared to Veillere as you look towards 2024. Understanding that this season is not over, but they're walking kind of a delicate line between, we want to get back into contention for a bowl game while also understanding that we're not going to be able to play for a championship this year in all likelihood, and that they need to maybe look for what they can do in the future, maybe a little bit more seriously. Moving down the depth chart, talk a little bit about O-line organization. Narduzzi hinted at a couple of developments on the injury front and offensive line. Blake Zuvovic was announced as a starter at guard prior to the Louisville game, but didn't play per the participation report that Pitt gives us at the end of every game. PJ Williams played a lot of right guard. Jason Collier was at left guard. An injury to Zubovic was not on my radar going into the game, or at least, the idea that he wasn't going to play. We asked Narduzzi today why he didn't play. Was it injury? Was he being benched? He said that, he didn't officially say it was an injury, but he did say that Zubovic wasn't, being replaced. He didn't get beat out in a competition by either Williams or Collier. So that leaves you one other option, and that's that he is dealing with an injury. He did dress and warm up. Like I said, he was announced as a starter, but he just apparently was not healthy enough to go. So like I said, Narduzzi didn't provide any specifics, but he did kind of hint at the fact that they'll have to see throughout this week and what he's able to do to as their indicator as to whether or not he can play this week. He did add when asked about Terrence Moore and Jay Cradle being listed as co-starters at center that they are a little bit more optimistic about a return to the lineup for Cradle this week. But I think this is interesting because I don't think Cradle goes right back to center when he returns, and this ties in Zubovic's spot as well in his situation. We've talked about this before, but I think in order to get Pitt's five best offensive linemen on the field, you got to think about moving Cradle to guard, which offensive line coach Dave Borbley said is his natural position. And then you're able to keep Moore at center, where I think he's been pretty good. He hasn't been perfectly, but plenty serviceable, and I think you can make it work, especially if Zuvovic comes back and Cradle is on the other side of him. He's sandwiched between two real veteran guys that can help him out, especially a guy like Cradle has played the position before. So, and then I think the other side of that is even if Zubovic is not able to go, then you're in more desperate need of a guard. I don't think Cradle, or I don't think Moore, excuse me, can play that spot, but he can be a pretty darn good center for you. So, just thinking about the distribution of resources and how you want to get your five best offensive linemen on the field, I think you could do that with Cradle at guard. I haven't been super impressed with Jason Collier this year. Uh, BJ Williams is, I think, still a work in progress as a true freshman, even though he showed some promise. So I think in order to get your best guys on the field, Cradle and Zuvovic are your guards. Bear and Branson Taylor making some strides as tackles, keeping their quarterbacks clean, and then more obviously at center. So we'll see how that works. We'll check them out at practice this week and see what kind of shape Jake Cradle and Blake Zuvovic are in, and get back to you, and then see who's ready to go on Saturday against Wake Forest. But moving to the other side of the ball, PJ O'Brien made a move back to starting at safety this week against Louisville. He was announced as a starter. Was not listed, I believe, as a starter on the depth chart. I don't have my depth chart from last week in front of me right now, but he had kind of been, de facto demoted. Donovan McMillan stepped in after the Cincinnati game, played really well against West Virginia, been a really good tackler for them over the past couple weeks since. But O'Brien back in the lineup against Louisville, which I thought was notable. McMillan was really only a special teamer up until really late in the second half. O'Brien took a majority of the snaps and played pretty well, I thought. 9 tackles, which was second on the team, 2 pass deflections, and he did have 1 defensive pass interference penalty. But quite honestly, I thought that was pretty questionable. I didn't necessarily agree with that call. I'm speculating a little bit, but I think because I don't watch practices and I'm not in meetings every day. But I think they were really part of the reason that they felt more comfortable with McMillan at safety instead of O'Brien was just that, O'Brien needed to channel his energy a little bit more. He has really relentless energy, but sometimes that can get him in trouble. I'll read this quote from Narduzzi today that made me think this, and I think lended itself to this notion. Here's what he said: PJ, after that Cincinnati game, I think he was a little bit down, but PJ, you got to love his attitude. PJ's been doing a good job. He's loud. He's obnoxious, which is good sometimes. He's a beauty. So I think they really like PJ. He's plays with a ton of energy. He's aggressive. I say this as a compliment I mean this as a compliment when I say that he's got a little bit of Paris Ford in him. I think super fast, never scared of contact ever, and capable of making some really game changing plays with his athletic ability. But the flip side of that is that he's pretty prone to penalties. And we talked about this a little bit following the Cincinnati game. But if he can't stay on the field, he can't stay on the field if he's costing his team with tons of penalties. That just can't happen. Appears he's done a nice job cleaning those up, and I think he's taken a well-deserved spot at safety. I think he's really talented, and I really like him as a player. But he had to clean up some stuff first, and that's all right. And the Panthers, luckily, they had a really capable guy in Donovan McMillan who could step up in his place. And I think now, as Coach Narduzzi told us, that they have three starting caliber safeties now, and McIntyre, O'Brien, and McMillan. They can all kind of be considered starters in the same way that they're 3 starting corners. With Devonshire, Woods, and Williams. While that's true, I still think that it's significant for O'Brien to come back and kind of take that mantle as a starting safety. So, we'll see what goes on moving forward. They say they're continuing to evaluate everyone and find the best fit for certain games in that week. So O'Brien's still going to have to work hard to hang on to that starting spot. But with that, I'm headed out of here. Thanks for tuning into another Inside Pitt Practice Report. Make sure to stay tuned with us all week for some more inside analysis of the Panthers. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/at Inside the Panthers, and find all of our reporting at insidethepanthers.com. Thanks for tuning in again, and until next time.